I'm Lise Avery of Anything Goes Internationally Syndicated Radio, and I'm here speaking with Alan Pepper, the co-owner of the legendary New York City nightclub The Bottom Line, and the series producer for the Bottom Line Archives series of recordings, Greg Bandian. Thanks so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you.
And we have 3 CDs that are about to be released. One of them is of Mr. Kenny Rankin, but this is actually a remaster of one that was released previously. Is that right?
Yes, the original Bottom Line Encore series had a number of live concerts at the Bottom Line released, and one of them was a 1990 show from Kenny Rankin, solo. So it's Kenny singing his material, a lot of Beatles material, and a lot of standards. So he's playing guitar, he's also playing piano, he sings a cappella, and he just has one of the most beautiful voices ever in the history of American popular music, and he's recognized by so many great jazz vocalists like Michael Franks and Al Jarreau, and we even got Al Jarreau to write a nice little tribute for the liner notes, and he wrote one of Helen Reddy's big hits, Peaceful. So we have Helen Reddy also talking about him on the liner notes for this. And it's the 25th anniversary of that concert. It's also the 50th anniversary of Kenny getting signed to Columbia Records. And this is the 75th anniversary of his birth. And he died a few years ago. So we're very fortunate to have this because it's his only official live recording.
The only official live recording.
Again.
So what was so special about Kenny Rankin's voice, Alan Pepper?
As Greg said, it was a beautiful voice, and it was an instrument. He really used it as an instrument, and
Can I just say on that, Stan Getz, the great progenitor of bossa nova music, called Kenny a horn with a heartbeat.
Oh, that's eloquent.
Yeah, that's great.
That's how, and he did a lot of albums with horn players like Michael Brecker and Stan Getz, and he was considered an instrumentalist for his voice.
He was a great interpreter of people's music as well. You know, there were a lot of great interpreters out there, and a lot of people who really sing well. I mean, the best example of somebody who I always think of as a voice as an instrument is Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, she's in a class by herself.
Really?
But Kenny is also kind of in a class by himself because he too uses his voice in the most, when you're listening to him, it's like you're really listening to just a wonderful instrument. And as I said, he was a terrific interpreter of other people's music. He truly made songs that you may have been so familiar with, he made them his own. And that to me is the mark of a great interpreter.
And one of his biggest fans was and is Sir Paul McCartney. And McCartney asked Kenny to sing a Beatles medley when Lennon and McCartney were inducted into the Songwriting Hall of Fame. So that's pretty high praise.
But he wasn't only a singer, right? He was a songwriter.
Guitar player and piano player. And he's a wonderful guitar player. He played guitar on Bob Dylan's Bringing It All Back Home. So he was a session musician in addition to being just an incredible artist.
In addition to being a songwriter and a guitarist and a singer, Kenny was also a very adept improviser.
Yes, and that was the generation he grew up with. So he grew up listening to Sinatra, who sang it differently each time. He grew up listening to Tony Bennett, who would take it in a direction depending on the moment. And you have Kenny really being spontaneous with the material. Each time he sang it, he was feeling it a different way. And so he really was a jazz guy in that it wasn't about reproducing, it was about being in the moment and interpreting the song at that time.
And he'd also go from guitar to piano to even doing stuff a cappella.
A cappella.
You know, he would just, and when he did stuff a cappella, you could hear the person breathing next to you. I mean, the club was so so into it and so concentrating on what.
And this release has 2 a cappella pieces on it. and they're incredibly beautiful. One is the encore. He comes back and,
Right.
and just sings by himself.
And he is, you know, we talk about being an interpreter. On this album, he does everything from Irving Berlin to McCartney and Lennon.
Yes, and his own original stuff.
Right.
It's quite a range. I mean, the liner notes article that I wrote for it was the songbook of a musician's musician. And that's really what it was. It was music to him, and he was just an interpreter of songs. And he could play them solo, he could play them without instrumental accompaniment, or he could play it with a band.
Mhm.
So he was really that kind of jazz musician, and that the spontaneity and the feeling was what the whole game was about.
All right, so we can find the 25th anniversary remaster of Kenny Rankin's only official live album.
Yes, Kenny Rankin plays the Beatles and more live at the Bottom Line.
So we can find that at bottomlinearchive.com.
That's right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Okay.
you.